Not too long ago, there was a song sung by Frank Sinatra. It was called I Did It My Way. And I remember when that song came out on video. It was a black and white video. Frank Sinatra is sitting there with a cigarette in his hand, smoking it, and he's singing the song, I Did It My Way. And it came to my mind, what came to my mind was, I did it my way to the exclusion of God or to any other person. I tackled life or lived my life on my own terms. I did what I wanted, when I wanted to do it, and how I wanted to do it, and I wasn't concerned about what anybody else thought. Later on, Jay-Z sung the same song, I Did It My Way. I believe it was in the 90s, and reiterated the same thing. Today in our lesson, we're going to meet a man who's doing things his way, but we're going to find out that it's all going to catch up with him. And he's going to find out that doing things his way is not the best way at all. I remember not too long ago going to a funeral of a young man, and at that funeral, people had shirts on it, I did it my way. And that young man that did it his way was in that casket. I will never forget that. So let's stay tuned and let's see how God intervenes and takes this man named Jacob and changes his life totally, where he no longer does things his way, but he does things God's way. Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. John W. Wilson III. Thank you for joining me today for this Sunday school lesson for September the 18th, 2022. The title of our lesson is Jacob Called Israel. Jacob Called Israel. There's going to be a name change. It's going to come from the 32nd chapter of Genesis. We're going to look at verses 22 through 32. Jacob called Israel. But before we get started, I want to remind you to support this channel, this Bible study, by hitting the like button, the share button, and hit the subscribe button. Pass this lesson along to many people as you think that can be blessed by this weekly Sunday school lesson. Well, let's get right into this lesson. Let's do a little bit of background. I think that'll set the context about what's going on. We talked about Jacob and Esau last week. This lesson here is going to focus primarily on Jacob. Esau will come into the picture. But let's talk about what the name Jacob meant. The word Jacob meant was grasping the heel. And remember that he's a twin and he's the second born. And as Esau was coming out the womb, guess what? The Bible says that Jacob was grasping his heel as he was coming out. And the word grasping his heel means to usurp. And that means that he was trying to pull Esau back into the womb so that he could be the first one out, and therefore he would get all the blessings of the firstborn, including the birthright. Now, as we talked about last week, was he intellectually conscious of it? No, I believe the two spirits inside Rebekah's womb were warring with one another. Okay, so we have Jacob being born. Name means grasping the heel. It means that he's a cheater, he's a con man, he's a swindler. He's going to do things his way and get what he wants by any means necessary, hurting people along the way. And sometimes, as we know, that when we live that life, if we're fortunate enough, we will live to regret it. And what I mean by that is that we'll have an opportunity to change and not stay like that person, stay a scoundrel or a swindler or a con man or a usurper or a rebellious, self-centered, narcissistic person. That's who Jacob was. But Jacob has received a promise from God. God has promised him that through him, he is going to be the one that's going to continue the legacy of Abraham, in which many descendants will come from. God's going to bless him anyway, in spite of who he is. But God's going to also transform his life. So here we have Jacob being a scoundrel. Some of the instances that we talked about last week was he stole the birthright, or swindled the birthright out of Esau, his older brother. God had appeared to Rebekah, his mother, and told him that the older will serve the younger, and that the blessing will come through the younger and not the older. So he did not wait on God. He wanted to do things himself, along with his mother Rebekah. And so Jacob on his own steals the birthright, and then Jacob and Rebekah conspire together to trick Isaac and steal the blessing that belonged to Esau. See, the thing about it was that God was in control. God was going to somehow make Jacob the prominent person anyway. But Jacob took things into his own his own hands, and try to do things his way. And that's the backdrop of this lesson here. It's going to come back to haunt him. When you hurt people, it brings about anger and bitterness, and you don't know how that person is going to respond. You have provoked that person to anger. And so by stealing the birthright and then ultimately taking away that blessing that was due his as the firstborn, there's created an animosity between Jacob and Esau. And therefore, Jacob is forced to leave Canaan and go somewhere else. And Rebekah sends him to her brother Laban, and Laban brings him in. And then they have their own ordeal. As you know, he spends 20 years there, and he's being tricked and tricked and tricked. He's reaping what he sows. And guess what? The trickster doesn't like being tricked. And so as we come to our lesson, it's been 20 years. During that 20 years, Jacob has amassed 11 sons and 1 daughter. Benjamin has not been born. God has blessed him with tremendous amount of wealth in spite of who he is. Laban has benefited from his association with Jacob. Laban is very greedy. He wants more and more and more. He's constantly tricking him, changing the terms of his contract that he had to work with him about 10 times. They come to agreement that in fact, Jacob leaves. He's tired of it. He wants to go. He's made Laban a lot of money. Now he wants to have his own household, so he packs up his wives, their maidservants, packs up his children and servants, all the property that belongs to him, and he leaves. And so so Laban goes after him and then wants to do something, but God appears to him in a dream, and he tells him don't speak good or bad at him, and so he doesn't. And so they make up. But the key is that Jacob is very wealthy right now. God has blessed him. And if you remember early on that Laban and Jacob got to a fight and arguing about wealth, and Jacob said, I'll take the spotted, the striped goats, which was the lesser number. And then Laban takes what was there, gives them to his sons. And so in essence, Jacob has to start all over, and God blesses him by him having to be able to identify the stronger goats that drink at this water, and all the stronger goats that are being born black and white, polka dot striped, which are his, and they just multiply. Laban doesn't like it, and that's what forces Jacob to leave, because now there's strife, there's envy, and so he says, it's time for me to go. Laban chases him out, they make amends, and then now God chases him out of there and tells him to go to his home country, which is Canaan. But in order to go to Canaan, he has to go through Edom, and in Edom, that's where Esau is. So that's our setting right here. In order to go back to his home country, which is Canaan, he has to go through Edom, and that's where Esau is living. And that brings us just to chapter 32. Okay? Alrighty. So, in chapter 32, before we get there, I just want to give a little background of what's happening. right before we dive into it. Okay? All right? So, in 32, it says Jacob went on his way. And so as he goes on his way to Canaan, some angels meet with him, and he names the place Mahanaim. And then Jacob says that, okay, I'm going through Edom. Now I'm going to have to send messengers to let Esau know that I'm coming through there, because the last time I saw Esau, which was 20 years ago, it was bad blood. I did something awful and terrible to him, and Esau has every right to want to kill me or to want to harm me and my household in some kind of way. So he sends his messengers to the country of Edom, instructing them to meet with him. And then when they see Esau or his messengers, tell Esau all of this wealth that they have accumulated, the oxen, donkeys, the flocks, the male servants, the female servants, and that he's telling them that he may have favor in his sight, meaning that tell Esau, I have all this wealth. I'm willing to share this wealth with you and make amends with you if you really hoping that he will not harm him. In that society, wealth was determined by your livestock. For him to have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male servants, female servants, meant that he was very wealthy. That would be like saying, I have house and boats and people and servants waiting on me today. I have Mercedes, I have Benz, I have BMWs, I have all these rich cars. And so he's trying to let them know, I am wealthy and I'm willing to share this wealth with you in order that we may have peace among each other. Because it says right here, in order that I may find favor in your sight, in order that you will not harm me, I'm willing to share some of my wealth with you. And the messengers, it says here in verse 6 of chapter 32, and the messengers returned to Jacob saying, we came to your brother Esau, and he's coming to meet you. Okay? That brings fear into Jacob's heart. And there are 400 men with him. That brings even a greater fear. Not only did this plan backfire, you got to remember, this is Jacob speaking. Jacob doesn't hear about Jacob praying or doing anything like that. He's going to take matters in his own hands because he thinks he's the smartest person in the world. He thinks that he can con himself out of every situation. He thinks that he doesn't need God. I'm going to fix this myself. And so I'm going to try to bribe him first. Give him something. He didn't realize that Esau has done well for himself also, and that Esau doesn't need anything that Jacob is going to offer him. But yet Esau returns the favor by saying, I'm going to meet him. I'm going to bring 400 men. And 400 men is a symbolic or not even symbolic, practical nature. It means that he's bringing an army with him. When David would go to war, he would bring 400 men. He would bring all these men. That's a number of war. So what Jacob believes is that Esau is coming to attack him because he's bringing so many men. Why would he bring that many men? I don't know. But why would he bring that many men and not want to fight? And so now he is, it says right here, he's distressed. He said, then Jacob was greatly afraid, meaning that he began to worry. He was frightened. His plan didn't work. This bribery didn't work. He's trying to figure out what I need to do. How do I get out of this situation? He can't think of anything, so he's greatly feared. He's distressed. He's worried not only for him, but for everything that he has, for all of his family, his maidservants, his wives, all the property. He's just worried to death. He doesn't know what to do, so he comes up with another plan. He said, I'm going to figure this out. He says he divided the people that were with him and the flocks, the herds, and the camels into two camps. All this wealth, all these people. I'm going to do two camps. If he comes to attack this camp, at least I have this other camp. And so and the other camp can escape. So he's figuring this out. He's not coming to God. He's trying to figure it out. But God sometimes allows stress to come into our lives so that we can be drawn to him. Sometimes God wants to get us to our weakest point where we have no more answers, we have no more solutions, and that we only can turn to him. And then that's what happens here. Jacob prays to God, okay? And this is the longest prayer in the book of Genesis. And he prays to God because he doesn't know what else to do. 400 men. You know Esau was an outdoorsman, a bow and arrow. You know these men are skilled, they're sharp, they're outdoor, they're ready to fight, they're ready to hustle. And you know that Jacob's men are probably herdsmen, they're probably business-minded, they probably don't fight at all. You don't hear them fighting, you don't hear him saying, oh, I'll match my men with your men. He doesn't have 400 men. His wealth, his property is in the livestock. And then it seems that Esau is his strength is in his armies and ability to fight and conquer. Therefore, he is scared. So he prays this prayer, and in this prayer, he says, "Oh, to my father Abraham." He's recounting who God is, telling God who is the God of my father Isaac. You said to me, God, is you who told me to return, that you may do good. And now it seems as though I'm going to be destroyed. I'm going to be defeated. I'm going to be killed. He said, I'm not worthy least of all the deeds of steadfast love and all the faithfulness that you have shown your servant. He recounts that, God, you have blessed me in all these ways. In spite of who I was, in spite of all I've done, I am not worthy of all what you have shown me. And so he's being humbled. He's coming to terms that I'm not all this who I thought I was. I am not the smartest person in the room. My tricks have led me to this path. That my tricks, my kindness have caught up with me. What I did to Esau 20 years ago now is coming to haunt me, and it's going to catch me in a way that I can't do anything about it. So he's reminding God of all these things. He's telling God, I am nothing without you. You have been good to me. And he says, I have become two camps. Please deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him. He's opening up to God, telling him what he really fears, that he may come and attack me, the mothers with the children. But you said, I will surely do good. God, you promised me that if I go back, goodness will happen to me, and that my offspring will be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. He's reminding God of what he says. Not that God needs it, but he's trying to re-emphasize, God, this is what you promised. I'm holding you to your word. God, I know that you keep your promises. God, this is what you said. So the issue, he stayed there where he was that night, okay? And it says right here, and from what he had with him, he took a present for his brother Esau. Now he's still scheming. He's down to the breaking point, but he's still thinking about what he's doing, what he can do. God in his mind hasn't acted fast enough. So what he's going to do, he says he's going to take all of this livestock, these 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, and 20 rams, 30 milking camels, all of this right here. And he's giving it to his servants in 3 stages, and he wants them to go ahead of him. And as Esau approaches, offer him these gifts. And if he doesn't take the first, that's not enough. Take the second, that's not enough. Take the third. He's trying to appease him so that he will not destroy him. So it is Jacob's character to always try to do things on his own, always do things apart from God. He's praying to God, and really what's happening here, we should be praying to God first. Way back when he got afraid, he should have got on his knees and prayed to God. But no, he prays to God after he's tried his little tricks. And then he prays to God, and then he tries some more tricks to try to appease Esau. And really what he should be doing is praying first, and then trusting God, and letting God direct him on what he needs to do. And we're going to find out that he has really nothing to worry about, but he's really fearful. And sometimes in our lives, when we're under a lot of stress, when things are going on, we try to work things out for ourselves. We just can't put this on Jacob. Let's look at our lives, and we try to fix problems. And the only time we call God is that when all our fixes don't work, then we go to God. But in reality, the wise man, the wise person, always goes to God in first, and then let God direct and order his steps. And that's where we get the most peace, and that's how we get our problems resolved in the way that's according to God, that's pleasing to him. God knows what's going on. He knows the whole situation. Why not go to him first? Okay? And so he does all these things to try to appease him, because it says, for he thought, I may appease him with the presents that goes ahead of me, and afterwards I shall see his face. He'll be so happy to get all these things, all this wealth, that he'll forget about the past, or he'll forget about his anger, and then he'll accept me. Okay, so the present passed ahead of him, and he himself stayed the night at the camp. Okay, so here we have, he's at this camp. He sent those things, those presents ahead of him. Now we're in our passage right now where Jacob is going to wrestle with God himself. He says that same night he arose and he takes his 2 wives, 2 female servants, and his 11 children plus Dinah. Okay, and 11 children probably should be interpreted 11 sons. Okay, and crossed the ford of the river. A ford of the Jabbok, the river of the low end of the river of Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream and everything else that he had. So he's separating himself from his family. Okay, he's gonna. I think he's thinking that he's gonna approach Esau by himself. Doesn't want his family there. He says, and Jacob was left alone. And then all of a sudden, abruptly, and a man wrestled with him until the break of day. A visible manifestation of a man. This was not a flesh and blood man, but this was a visible manifestation of a man whom later on Jacob will conclude that is God, or at least a messenger or representative of God that he has wrestled with. But he comes in form of a man. He looks like a man, feels like a man, looks to be flesh and blood, but he's a supernatural being. And that's who he's going to wrestle with. And he wrestles with him to the break of the day. I don't know how many hours that is, but he wrestles with him for a long time. And right before sun would come up. And that word wrestled means that he contested with him. It was a contest. It was a pushing back and forth. It was trying to see who could pin each other to the ground. It wasn't blows, but there was a wrestling match to see who could submit the other person. Who would prevail in bringing the other one down. Who would win this wrestling match, this struggle? But the good word would be this contest, this contesting, this pushing back and forth, this trying to pin someone to the ground. That's how it went, this jostling going on. It went on for hours into the morning, right before daybreak. Okay? Jacob can't see this person. He knows that he's wrestling. It's dark. But he knows he's wrestling with this person. He says, and when this man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, this man said, I can't win. If you remember, Jacob was extremely strong. In the earlier chapters, we see that he moved a heavy, large stone. So even though he was a man that liked to be at home, God had gifted him with a tremendous amount of strength. Not supernatural strength, but an enormous amount of strength. And this man realized that he could not prevail. Maybe in my mind, I'm thinking that this man limited his powers to match those of Jacob and therefore could not prevail against Jacob. And so when he found out that he could not prevail, could not win against him, could not submit him, could not get him to stop, he touched him in the hip socket. And then that, if you know anything about wrestling or you know anything about jostling or contesting or trying to get somebody to submit, you hit them in the hip, you cannot do anything. And so he separated the ball of the hip, the ball from the hip joint, and therefore it rendered Jacob helpless as it relates to wrestling with him. He touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint, separated the ball from the joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, let me go, for the day has broken. Jacob had a grip on him, even though he couldn't wrestle anymore, but he had a strong grip on him. And this man said, let me go, for the day has broken. And I believe that let me go, for the day has broken. This man did not want, this supernatural man, this representative of God, or God himself, or this incarnate Jesus Christ, said, let me go, because he did not want Jacob to see his face. I believe that if Jacob saw his face, he would have died. He would have died. And so it's not for the man's sake to let me go. It's for Jacob's sake. Because obviously, if the man could touch him and his hip goes out of socket, he can easily touch his hands and make his hands let go of him. It says, let go of me, for the day has broken. And so what I want to say is that wrestling and tussling all night, it shows the kind of determination that Jacob wanted. He sensed that this was an ordinary man, and he wants something from this man, and he's going to wrestle for it, he's going to tussle for it, he's going to hold on to it and not let go. It shows the determination and the fight that's in Jacob. Okay? And so here we have, but Jacob said, I will not let go until you bless me. So that's why he was wrestling him so long. He wanted a blessing. Jacob said, I'm in a terrible situation. I'm afraid. I'm stressed. My family's in danger. Man's trying to kill me. I will not let you go until you bless me. What kind of blessing is Jacob looking for? I believe he's looking for a blessing that will free him out of the situation. But little did he know that God has a blessing that's even greater than that. And sometimes when we ask God, I want a blessing. And sometimes God has a bigger plan for us than just that immediate blessing that you want. And even though it's important, it's needed, it's necessary, it's causing a lot of stress, sometimes God has bigger plans, and God has bigger plans for Jacob. God is saying to Jacob, what he's going to say to him is that this is not, you may need this blessing here, but there's something that you need greater. And what I'm going to give you is going to be greater than what you need, but it's going to encompass the blessing that you're asking for. So he says right here, he says, I will not let you go until you bless, unless you bless me. And he said to him, the man said to Jacob, what is your name? Okay, and you remember the name in the Old Testament means a lot. Oftentimes it was prophetic, and in Jacob's case, it was extremely prophetic. His name was Jacob, and it means grasping at the heel, a usurper, a cheater, a swindler, a con man, someone who could not be trusted, someone who thought about themselves. And he said, Jacob. So he's telling Jacob to identify who you are. And he said, I am Jacob. I am all of this, and I don't like what I am. Then he said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob. You shall no longer be called swindler, con man, all those bad things. But you shall be called Israel. And that Israel is a combination of two words. It's a combination of striving and God. The Israel means to strive or to struggle. The El of Israel means Elohim, means God. I struggled with God. I have strived with God. Or it means that God strives. That's what Israel means. There's many different names meanings that people have given Israel. So this is just the one I chose here. But you have two words, Israel, which means struggle or strive, and Elohim, which means God. So God strives or struggle with God or striving with God. And so he gives a new name, Israel, for you have striven with God, with men, and have prevailed. You have striven with Esau, and you have striven with Laban, and you have prevailed. You have striven with God, and you have won the contest. In my mind, that in the wrestling match, this jostling match, I don't think he defeated the man, but he held his own, and in a sense, to me, that was a victory. And so that's what it said. You have prevailed. You have proved yourself worthy. You have proved yourself determined. And so I believe that's what it means by prevail. He didn't defeat him. He didn't pin him down, but his determination, his ability to hold on for that blessing meant that Jacob really won. He won something that he needed most, and that was a name change. And that name change is a transformation. No longer will you be this, but now you will be this. No longer you will be self-centered Jacob, who always thinks about himself, who's hurting people left and right, leaves a trail of broken hearts and bad relationships. Now you will be on the side of God, and now you will be a blessing to God's people. No longer will you hurt people. Doesn't mean that his life is going to be perfect and righteous, but means that he has a change of thought, and no longer he will be that swindler that he once was before. He will now be under God, and God, he will be a person who tries to live for God, and that's what he'll be. So then Jacob asked him, please tell me your name. He said, why do you ask my name? And the guy said, I'm not going to tell you my name. If I told you my name, you wouldn't even know what it meant anyway. There's of no significance to me. But by him asking his name is a way of Jacob submitting to this man and realize that this man is superior than him. So we have Jacob here becoming humble. Israel's becoming humble, something that he was not before. And so the transformation is taking place here. It says here, it said, what is your name? And he said, why is it that you ask my name? And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel. Okay, for I have seen God face to face. Now Peniel is also the two words too. Peni, P-E-N-I, means face to face. El again means Elohim, meaning that I have seen God face to face. Did he literally see God's face? No, it was dark. Meaning this man had to leave before daylight because, in other words, that's when Jacob would have seen him. But face to face means I've had a close encounter with God. I've had a personal encounter with God. I've had intimacy with God. He wrestled with him for hours and hours. He was this close to God, almost as if they were literally face to face. Did he see God's face? No, he would have died. But in a sense, he was face to face with God because he wrestled with God all night long. Okay? It says here, for I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered. Meaning that I've been that close to God, and I did not die. I've been that close to God, and I'm still living today. The sun rose upon him as he passed. Pentiel, it said the sun rose upon him as he passed. Pentiel limping because of his hip. Okay, so he had that forever hip. I believe that he limped for the rest of his life as a reminder of that. No longer am I dependent upon myself and my wicked ways. Now I am dependent upon God. I'm not quite as strong as I used to be because I got this limp. I can't do all I want to do because of this little kind of hip. Now I will become dependent upon God. And that's what I believe, that's what the point of the hip is. No longer I'm dependent on my evil ways. Now I submit and I'm dependent upon God. It said, therefore to this day, the people of Israel do not eat the sinew, that's the muscle around the hip, of the thigh that is on the hip socket, because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip on the sinew of the thigh. Okay. Now what is this passage saying to us? Okay. What it's saying to us is that, one, that God wants you to change. If you're living a wayward life, it is God's desire that you change, that you not stay that person. That's what he's saying there. What else is God saying there? He says, a lot of people say, I did it my way. I'm dependent upon myself. I think I know everything. This shows there will come time in your life that you're going to realize that you don't know what you know. It's going to come a time in your life that you realize that you're not in control of your destiny or even your situation. You may say, I did things my way. That way is going to lead you down a dangerous path. What is God saying here is that when we're in stressful situations, the first thing we ought to do is to pray and give it to God and not try to fix it ourselves. Go to God first instead of going to God last. Give our fears to God. Here, what I love about this is that God changed Abram to Abraham, Sarai to Sarah. That was a sign of a new person or a new chapter in your life. He also later on would change Paul's name from Saul to Paul. Paul was no longer to be Saul. It was a new chapter in his life, and his new chapter, in that new chapter, he's going to be named Saul. In this case here, Jacob is starting a new chapter in his life. That old chapter is past. Those old ways are gone. Now he's going to go from Jacob to Israel. God does keep his promise, and through his descendants, we get the 12 tribes of Israel. We get the descendants of the family here begins to multiply in numerous ways. And this is how Israel, the nation, is being born. So, wow, this is a very life-changing lesson. Never too late to change. Let God into your life. Give God a chance. When he asked for a blessing, he said, I'm not going to let you go till you bless me. He would say, I'm not going to let you go till you speak good into my life, till you put your hand on my life and allow something to happen. If you're going through a struggle in your life, say, God, I'm not letting go of you until you bless me. Lord, I'm not going to let go of you until you speak well of me, until you speak truth in my life. I'm ready to surrender my life to you. I've looked at my life and I've seen how I've done things my way, how I messed up everything. Lord, I'm willing to transform my life to you. God, I will not let go until you speak blessings into my life. And watch God do a tremendous transformation into your life. Watch God speak blessings into your life. Your first blessing will come when you become a child of God through Jesus Christ. That opens up a floodgate. Now, he didn't necessarily give Jacob the blessing that he wanted immediately, meaning that he didn't give him an armory to fight against Esau with, or where the arrows couldn't penetrate him. He didn't give him a bow and arrow. He didn't give him spears. He didn't bring soldiers to his rescue. No, but he really gave him what he wanted. Well, that was a character change. And by him having a character change, God was also working on the heart of Esau. So when they did meet one another, it was a time of rejoicing and reminiscing. And all of that, what Jacob thought was going to happen, did not happen at all. I remember times in my life where I've given God a chance to work in my life. I have prayed to God. I thought it was going to work out some kind of way, some terrible way. And guess what? God changed it, manipulated that situation where harmony came out of it. It didn't happen the way I wanted it to happen. In fact, the way it happened was beyond my wildest of imaginations. God took a terrible situation and turned that situation into a tremendous blessing and a time to rejoice. That's what God will do in your life. He'll do the impossible if you only give him a chance, if you only submit to him. Hold on to God for that blessing. And tell God, I don't like me. I want a different me. And watch what God will do through Jesus Christ. Well, I hope this has been a lesson that has been beneficial to you. I hope that if you're teaching, that something may be said that will help you in your lesson. If you're a student, I hope something will be said that will help you, that will help you understand this lesson. Love you much. Can't wait till we talk till next time. Have a good Sunday. Have a great Sunday school. Love you much.